Hey Latchkey kids and driving mutants, I'm Lady Shasha, mistress of the snark. This week's request comes courtesy of Dr. Nerdenstein, who says, "You're welcome. Can I make a request? For your next series review, could you please do the Nightmare on Elm Street series?" And even more recently, Rideshare and Delivery LLC also said, "Hi, can you do one on the Nightmare on Elm Street series?" Absolutely. As a matter of fact, this happens to be my favorite series out of the big three, and the big three being Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Fun fact, I used to live on Elm Street when I was a kid, so when the TV spots came on for Nightmare on Elm Street, it hit me a little bit harder. And I wanted to see the movie so bad from those TV spots, even though they scared the crap out of me. But I had to wait a whole year until it hit cable for me to see it. My parents were great about taking us to see sci-fi horror movies or werewolf movies, but they weren't into the slasher thing. I actually think my dad might be a little bit scared or unsettled by slasher movies, and I get the impression that my mother sees them as lowbrow. I, on the other hand, love slasher movies, and I think I get it from my grandmother, who first watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre with me when I was 11 years old. She loves slasher movies, including the big three. She loves Candyman, but the Jeepers Creeper is her favorite slasher. She loved Halloween 2018, and she is looking forward to Halloween Kills. So shout out to Grandma for watching slasher movies with me. Since growing up, I've been fortunate to see other great slasher movies besides the big three, like Pieces and The Burning, but my favorite will always be A Nightmare on Elm Street. The opening is iconic. It shows Freddy making his glove, and you can hear him breathing. The score works to build tension. And that title font, like I said, iconic. One thing of note about Nightmare on Elm Street when compared to other slasher movies is that the parents are actually around. Of course, they are integral to the plot. But let's talk about the teens first. Nancy, Rod, Glenn, and Tina. There are two short scenes to establish them, and yet I feel like I know them more than any of the camp counselors on Friday, or anyone other than Lori, Jamie, and Tommy from the Halloween series. Shout out to Lynn Shay as the teacher. This movie has so many amazing scare scenes in it. One of my favorite being the scene that happened in high school. I always loved the way Tina's arm just flopped. It's the little things. Another amazing scene is the bathtub scene. The creativity and execution is still amazing to this day. I really like that Nancy's mother took her to the Sleep Institute to get help, but the doctors were just making up medical jargon that made no sense at all. At one point he said, "There's no sign of pathology in her EKG." Anyways, let's talk about the other kills. I recently mentioned Tina's kill in my review for Poltergeist because of the use of the rotating room. But they actually used the rotating room twice in Nightmare on Elm Street. But before we get to that incredible scene, let me tell you why Rod's death is like the most anticlimactic death to me in this. I respect the effort and the special effects artistry it takes to make the sheet look like it's moving on its own, but it's just, compared to the other deaths in this, that one was my least favorite. My favorite kill is definitely Glenn's. I like his kill because when you first see the movie, it's so unexpected. I mean, the part with Freddy's glove was totally expected, but the blood tower was not expected when you first see it. Another thing that makes this movie stand out so much are the dream sequences. They really do feel dreamlike, and they show Nancy experiencing things that we experience in dreams. Like, have you ever had a dream where you're trying to run but you just can't move fast enough? That's what the stairs scene represents to me, when she's trying to go up the stairs but they're turning into like quicksand. That's such a dreamlike thing to happen. Or when Tina's dreaming and she's walking in the alley and a random sheep walks by. That's a very dreamlike thing to happen. The first Nightmare on Elm Street also establishes how trash-ass the parents are. And let's take a moment to appreciate Nancy's alcoholic mother. I just wanted to pay tribute to how she was pulling bottles out of everywhere. She pulled a bottle out of the linen closet, but the funniest is when she pulled the bottle out from under the covers when she was in bed. A legend. Another thing that struck me as odd though when I was watching this, which by the way is on HBO Max and also on Peacock TV, is that the door in the house is blue. Why do I remember it being red? I mean, it's red in all the sequels, but suddenly it's blue in the first one. Am I being Mandela affected, or do I just only remember the house door being blue? You guys let me know in the comments if you remember the door on the house from the original Nightmare on Elm Street being red, or was it always blue and I'm just tripping? Two more things that elevate this beyond other slasher movies. Number one is the score. It is an amazing score. I put it right up there with the original score from Poltergeist. You can play that score for me and I can tell you what part of the movie is happening. It's just a really beautiful score. And the second thing are the effects. I did speak about the rotating room that they used to do what I call the blood tower in Glenn's death sequence. But also Freddy Krueger's original makeup. I feel like his makeup looks the best in this movie. I don't think it looked as good in part 2 or even in New Nightmare. I didn't like the redesign in New Nightmare, if I'm being completely frank. I think his makeup looked amazing in this. And the telephone scene, that's another one. That was such a great jump scare because no one expected that when that first happened. But the way that that was made and the tongue moving, that's a great effect, and I think it doesn't get enough credit. Some of the effects do look hokey, like when his arms are stretching in the alley, but I accept it because it's part of a dream sequence, and things can look a little odd in dreams. Now, some people might criticize Wes Craven for reusing a little bit of a sequence that he formerly used in Last House on the Left, which is the booby traps, but I like it. I like that Nancy did this. I like that her character is strong and resilient and smart and a kind person. She's a really great final girl. I'm trying to think of what else I want to say about this other than it's good on all fronts. I can talk about Nightmare on Elm Street all day, but since I have to get through this whole series, I'm actually going to make this a little bit short. I'll be back in a moment to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. Welcome back. Let's talk about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. First and foremost, if I could find that yellow shirt that Jesse had on when he was dancing in his room, I would have on that yellow shirt, but I couldn't find it anywhere and I didn't have time to make it. So I'm just going to do Part 2 in the same outfit that I had for Part 1. Also, I liked Part 2 before it was cool, and I went through years of people making fun of me for liking Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, but now it's cool to like Part 2. I see you, Johnny come latelys. Welcome to the party. But no worries, I'm used to that type of ribbing. I like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and I also like the Howling 3 The Marsupials. So I am no stranger to being the odd one out and liking things that other people may not like. I don't think initially people respected the comedic elements in this, like the family's response to Jesse waking up in the morning.
Mommy, why can't Jesse wake up like everybody else?
When I saw this as a kid, I totally missed all of the homoerotic elements of this. And words to wise, don't get my comments with any type of homophobic bullshit because I will send you to the block party without hesitation. As an adult, I enjoy the homoerotic part of this movie. It was way ahead of its time and I'm glad that it exists. By the way, there's an excellent documentary on Shudder about how the writer of this movie denied the presence of homoeroticism in his script for 20 years. He even went as far as to blame the director and even accused the actor who played Jesse of being too gay to play a straight character. Now that Google is a thing that exists and people can read the script, the writer eventually admitted those things not only were in the script, but a lot more was left out of the movie. Anyway, check out that documentary. I love how this movie starts out with Robert Englund being the driver of the school bus. In this, the new main character is Jesse, who is now moved into Nancy's old house, and the door is red on the house at this time. I'm actually not going to waste time going through the kills on this one because of the series, the kills are the weakest in this movie and they're just kind of forgettable. Some of them are downright lame. Usually something like that would really bug me, but there's something else that I connect to in this movie. The strongest element in this movie is the character of Jesse. He's likable and you want to root for him. And I like the little things that his character does, like when his father doesn't let him go out for the evening and tells him that he has to clean up his room and he stomps up the stairs. That's such a realistic teenager thing to do. Also, when he was dancing alone in his room, who hasn't done that? He's just a really nice kid and he comes across as someone that you'd want to be friends with. That's what's missing in a lot of modern horror movies. It's one of my biggest criticisms of Rob Zombie's Halloween. He made Laurie Strode the most unlikable, unsufferable little wench. Who would ever root for her? Anyways, Mark Patton makes an incredibly great Scream King because he actually screams in this movie. And that makes sense for the situation. What doesn't make sense is the scene with the birds. No one was even asleep, so why? The pool scene also doesn't make sense. Why are the hot dogs exploding? Why are the beers exploding? No one is asleep. It's not the dream world, so how can Krueger control these things? Also, the doors closing and locking themselves in Lisa's house. Again, not in the dream world, so how is Krueger controlling these things? Freddy Krueger can teleport now, the fence is electrified, and the pool is on fire for some reason. None of this makes sense outside of the dream world. Also, why their people face dogs. And here's where I'm going to get into how the special effects were not as good in this as in the first one. The people face dog doesn't even look as good as the one from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That one really creeped me out the first time I saw it. These just made me laugh. Then there's parts of this movie that goes from not making sense to absolutely ridiculous, like when Lisa goes to the factory and she sees a monster rat, and then the monster rat gets eaten by the monster cat. And I'm not making any of this up. This happens in this movie. That part was actually kind of stupid. Like, why is there a monster rat? Why is there a monster cat? I mean, was it stop motion? I guess it was stop motion. It was interesting to look at, but I don't know why it was there. Another thing I have to criticize about this movie is the score. It just is not as good as the original Nightmare on Elm Street score. And the one thing that is a positive is the Fonda Ray track. When he's dancing in the room, that's like the best part of the musical score for this movie. Or actually that'd be part of the soundtrack, but you get my point. Some of the background sounds don't make sense either. Like when Jesse and Lisa go to the factory and it sounds like the wind is blowing through the trees in a forest. That did not match up with the scene that they were actually filming. Also, I'm not a fan of the finger blades growing directly out of Freddy's hands. I like the glove. I think the glove is amazing. Why would you change that? The effect of the finger blades coming out of the fingers was done well. I can't argue that it's a bad effect. I just don't like that change. And also, like I said, I don't like how Freddy's makeup looks in this one. The song playing at the pool party sounds like they couldn't get the rights to use You Spin Me Around. I liked it. I miss groups like that. Like Dead or Alive, Depeche Mode, New Order, Erasure, Kajagoogoo. By the way, there's a poster of Lamal, the lead singer of Kajagoogoo, on Grady's wall. Now here is the weirdest part of the movie, is how Lisa defeats Freddy by basically loving him. She kisses him on the mouth and says how much she loves Jesse, because at this point Freddy Krueger is pretty much taken over Jesse's body. And why can I not remember how Freddy started to be on fire? I'm really drawing a blank on how he caught fire. Isn't that strange? Well, anyways, he caught fire and then he was like a husk on the ground. And then Jesse crawls out of that burnt shell husk again. And I know as I describe this movie, it doesn't sound like it's a good movie, but I still like it. I can't help it. I will admit it's not the best movie. No, there's a lot of things wrong with it. But then there's some things that are really great about it. And another thing that I think was a missed opportunity is I think that Jesse should have been one of the kids in the hospital in part 3. Like in most of the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, they carry one survivor over to the next movie, or in the case of part 4, they carried 3 survivors into the next movie. And I think Jesse should have been one of the kids that was in the hospital in Dream Warriors. But anyways, that's enough of my little rantings and ravings about Nightmare on Elm Street 2. At the time of this video, I watched both of these on HBO Max, but I think they are also both on Peacock TV. Like I said, the Nightmare on Elm Street series is my favorite of the big 3, so obviously I'm gonna have a much more glowing opinion of it. But don't take my word for it, watch it for yourself. Just because I love something doesn't mean you won't hate it, and just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't love it. What do you think of the Nightmare on Elm Street series? Let me know in the comments. And also, thank you Dr. Nernstein and Ride Share and Delivery LLC for suggesting that I review the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Stay tuned for more Nightmare on Elm Street this week. Until next time.